Hi, today we are going to explain the plot of the movie called Hounds of Love, which was released in 2016. Well, let's start with the story. In December 1987 in Perth, Australia, a group of high school students were seen practicing volleyball on the court in earnest because their school would have an interclass match. In the distance, a couple watched their activities. After a while, the girls finished practicing and went home. One of the students who was not picked up by her parents decided to walk home. And on the way, she was approached by the couple who wanted to give her a ride home. She was reluctant at first, but the hot weather finally made her accept their ride. Instead of being taken home, the girl was taken to the couple's house, tied up and chained in a room, and forcibly f***ed by the couple. The next morning, the couple, John and Evie, carried on as if nothing had happened, with John watching television in the living room while Evie prepared breakfast and food for their dog Lulu. Later that day, after the girl he kidnapped yesterday, he killed her and buried her body in the woods far from the house. John and Evie turned out to have a sexual disorder. John liked to sleep with underage girls. He would choose his victims, then kidnap and imprison them. The victim would also be forced to have a threesome with Evie. At the end of each act, John and Evie would share the task. John would bury the victim's body, while Evie would clean up their act so no one would see them. The next potential victim was Vicki. One day, she stopped by the house of her boyfriend, Jason aka Jay. They met briefly and discussed Vicki's homework. Shortly thereafter, Vicki had to go to school, in class. Instead of listening to the lesson, Vicki was busy drawing. After class, the teacher invited Vicki to chat with the two of them, where it was discovered that Vicki's parents were divorced, and the teacher felt sympathy for her. Shortly thereafter, Vicki arrives home to her father, who has just given her a puppy. Later that day, Trevor, Vicki's father, takes Vicki to her mother Maggie's house. He does this twice a week. At dinner, Maggie tries to talk to Vicki, who looks glum. But Vicki doesn't care about the conversation. She immediately asks her mother for permission to go to a party. Maggie offers to take her, but Vicki says her father gave her money to take a cab. Maggie doesn't give her permission right away, and then they discuss Vicki's bad language grades at school, which is why she can't go to the party. Vicki gets upset and goes to her room, but sneaks out of her bedroom window. On the way to the party, she is intercepted by John and Evie. This time, the modus operandi is to offer Vicki cheap, illegal cigarettes. Vicki is immediately interested, but when she's about to pay, John admits that he has run out of stock and will have to pick up more at his house. Evie offers her a ride anyway, since they are going in the same direction. Vicki refuses at first, only asking for the right place to wait for a taxi. However, Evie convinces her and says she can order a cab from her house. Vicki doesn't suspect anything and gets into her car. Arriving at the house, Vicki didn't go straight inside. She chatted with Evie outside the house. Evie seemed like a friendly and motherly person. Not long after, John said from inside the house that Mark had just called and asked something. So he told Evie and Vicki to come inside first and have a drink. Unable to resist, Vicki is finally told to come in and have a drink, which turns out to be filled with an anesthetic. John shows up with the cigarettes and is about to give them to Vicki. But Vicki suddenly feels dizzy and quickly excuses herself. John and Evie quickly grab Vicki, who is screaming in panic, and tie her to the bed, which makes both of them and commit their crime. The next day, Maggie notices that Vicki is not coming out of her room. She checks and realizes that Vicki is not in her room. Maggie then calls Trevor, her ex-husband, to ask about Vicki, but Vicki is not there either. Finally, Maggie thinks that maybe Vicki is staying at her friend Shell's house. Elsewhere, John and Evie are having breakfast when they find Vicki's diary in her bag and learn of her family's condition. Vicki herself is still tied to the bed and continues to scream in fear. John checks on Vicki and sees her wetting herself. He immediately calls Evie and tells her to clean up the mess, and then curses her for not being able to take care of the children. Vicki watches Evie from her room, and after Evie cleans up the dog poop, she offers Vicki a drink. At first, she's afraid the drink is drugged again, so Evie drinks a little first to convince her, then Vicki drinks until it's gone. At which point Vicki begs Evie to let her go. She tells her that her father is a surgeon who can afford the ransom, but Evie refuses, saying that she's not after money, she just told Vicki not to mess with her. Vicki also asks if John is the reason Evie's kids don't live with them, to which Evie indirectly replies that John gave her a decent life. Evie then asks about Vicki's parents' marriage and leaves. Evie then tells Vicki to take a shower. While in the shower, Vicki sees an opportunity to escape through the bathroom window. Meanwhile, outside the house, John has just come out of a store to buy cigarettes and meets a couple of men who are collecting debts from him. Apparently, John likes to owe them money to buy illegal goods, but at that time John had no money. He promised to pay them tomorrow. Back at home, Evie tells Vicki to write a letter to her parents, especially her mother. At first, Evie tells Vicki to write that she met a guy and decided to move to Adelaide. However, after learning that Vicki's mother left her, she tells Vicki to write that she understands why her mother left her and is inspired to do the same by moving to Adelaide. She also asks her mother to apologize to Jason for her seeing another man. Before sending the letter, Evie reads its contents and then takes Vicki to her room. As she's about to be tied to the bed again, Vicki says she needs to go to the bathroom, so Evie takes her with her. But suddenly John comes home, says he'll take her with him, and tells Evie to rest. John doesn't come out of the bathroom for a while, which makes Evie suspicious and jealous. She bangs on the locked bathroom door. John comes out and Evie immediately Vicki seizes the moment to escape through the bathroom window. However, just as she was about to jump out, Lulu saw her and barked at her. John lost concentration and slowly realized that the bathroom window was open. They both panicked and ran forward. As it turned out, Vicki was still in the bathroom, hiding in the bathtub. While John and Evie were outside, she tried to find a way out of the house, and John realized that Vicki was still in the house because Lulu kept barking at the bathroom window. Just as Vicki thought she was safe at the back door, John appeared and grabbed her, and Vicki was once again held captive and tied to her bed. At the same time, their neighbor heard Vicki screaming. Evie went to the neighbor and claimed that she and John had just had a fight over a few drinks. Apparently, the neighbor was tired of hearing the screams coming from their house and dared to confront John, threatening to go to the police. However, Evie says that she will also report him for the illegal goods that he bought, so after the matter is settled, John tells Evie to deliver the letter that Vicki wrote while he rests at home and leaves with Lulu. Meanwhile, Maggie and her ex-husband Trevor go to the police station to report their missing daughter, but the police are reluctant to accept their report. The reason is that there are many girls in the area who are reported missing, but they only run away because their parents are divorced. Therefore, the police only told them to wait for Vicki to come home. The police also only promised to spread Vicki's description and told her to wait for news. If there was no news, Maggie could come back. Back home, Maggie searches Vicki's room for clues, finding only a torn photo of Maggie on her bed. While Trevor finds a new letter from Vicki in Maggie's mailbox. Maggie reads it and can't believe it was written by Vicki. But Trevor says that maybe Vicki was trying to make her feel guilty for leaving her and made Vicki run away. At John and Evie's house, Vicki is again. Instead of resting, John wants to Vicki while Evie is away. However, Vicki defecates on the bed, which makes John very angry and he doesn't do it. He removes the sheet and washes it. Outside, Evie heads home after successfully dropping Vicki's letter in the mailbox in front of Maggie's house. On her way home, Evie stops at the grocery store and sees a toddler who reminds her of her daughter Kim. This makes Evie want to talk to her daughter on the phone, but Kim's father doesn't allow her to talk to Evie. When Evie arrives home, she is stunned to see John running around naked, and when she confronts him, he pretends to be asleep. Evie watches in silence as Vicki goes out on the patio to smoke a cigarette. Feeling distraught, she reads Vicki's diary again, then goes to her room and unties one of Vicki's hands. She asks Vicki what happened while she was out. Vicki tells her what happened. She also says that John gave Evie the dog so that Evie's kids wouldn't have to live with them, that he was just using her and didn't love her. She also convinces Evie to let her go and promises to only report John. Vicki's words ringing in her ears as Evie takes a shower. Evie immediately asks John for an explanation. She also asks him to kill Vicki that night if John really loves her.
We see kids run off from situations.
She even threatens John with suicide while holding a knife to her own throat. However, John manages to manipulate Evie by lying that he was just cleaning up after Vicki, who defecated on the bed. John asks Evie to check the washing machine if she doesn't believe him, and sure enough, Evie sees the dirty sheets and approaches John. John says that Evie is as beautiful as she was when they first met. And this is where the story of how they met is revealed, namely that John saved Evie, who was often abused by her father. Evie immediately trusts John again and ends the fight. She also convinces John to kill Vicki and find someone else. However, John insists on keeping Vicki until Monday. John also manages to convince Evie that she is the most beautiful woman in the world so that Evie will obey him. In the end, they Vicki together. Monday arrives. John goes to the woods to prepare Vicki's grave, while Evie is at home doing her usual house chores and preparing to take care of Vicki. Evie cleans her room and gives Vicki a bath. Meanwhile, Maggie, who continues to miss Vicki, finds a heart-shaped drawing with her initials, and Jay, her boyfriend. Maggie goes to Jay and shows him the letter Vicki wrote. Jay managed to find the code Vicki left based on the capital letters at the beginning of each word. Maggie was surprised that the address was not far from where she used to live. Not waiting long, Maggie and Trevor invited Jay to look for Vicki at that address. They tried to report the discovery to the police, but the police did not want to help them immediately. In the end, Maggie decided to visit the address herself. After the shower, Evie tells Vicki to tie herself to the bed and get ready for round 2. At the same time, John returned from the woods and saw Lulu defecating in the open again. Being annoyed, John told Lulu to come out, but Lulu went into the kitchen instead. John brutally kicked the dog, and Evie saw it and begged John to stop torturing the dog, but unfortunately, Lulu ended up dead. John was remorseful and apologized to Evie. After getting rid of Lulu's body, John reminded Evie of the plan to bring her child to live with her, but she had to take care of Vicki first, so John suggested that she tell Vicki to write another letter. Evie organizes the contents of the letter that Vicki will write while wielding a kitchen knife, after which she tells Vicki to take all the sleeping pills in the bottle. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door, and Gary comes to collect a debt from John. At the same time, Maggie arrives at Evie and John's address. And when she knocks on the door, it's Evie's neighbor who comes out. Vicki deliberately didn't give her real address, but Maggie didn't give up. She screamed Vicki's name until it was heard in the neighboring houses. John sees Maggie looking for Vicki. While inside the house, Evie overhears and smothers Vicki's mouth to stop her from screaming. Meanwhile, Evie continues to force Vicki to take the sleeping pills so that Vicki will die quickly. But Vicki tells Evie to just kill her with the knife. John, tired of hearing this, gets angry and strangles Vicki. Unexpectedly, Evie stabs the knife into John's body so many times that John dies. Vicki uses this moment to escape from the bathroom window. Evie suddenly appears from the front door, but she lets Vicki go. Maggie had just pulled off the road, driving, glancing occasionally in the rearview mirror. She sees Vicki limping quite a distance behind Maggie's car. Maggie immediately stops to pick Vicki up.